Now, one thing that would be nice to do with that node is display it after it was created. Later, we'll also save it to a file, but as a first step, let's simply display it. And to do that, we could of course expose these fields by giving them uppercase starting characters. That would then allow us, in the main package, to access usernode.title, for example, and, for example, output that to the console. But that's not what I'll do here. Instead here, all these fields should not be exposed, and instead I want to add a method that can then be called to interact with that node. And that method could be called display, starting with an uppercase D, so that it can be used from outside this file. And we'll turn it into a method that's attached to this node by adding such a receiver argument here. So this pair of parentheses between func and display here. Here we should then add the node type, so our struct type, as a received argument, and we can give this a name, like node, which can then be used internally inside this function to interact with that received node struct value. So in here, we can then use the format package, which you should therefore import, to output some data about that node. And here I'll output data with help of printf to mix things up and say your node titled, and then a placeholder for a value, has the following content. And then a colon and maybe 2 line breaks, and then another placeholder for a value. And now we have to list all the values that should be used for these placeholders. And for the first placeholder, I of course want to have the title. So since we received a node here through that receiver argument, we can access it and access the title. Here in this file, we can access that without problem because we're in the same package. And then for the second placeholder, it's node content. We could display more information, but here that's all I want to output. And therefore now with that, we added this method, and back in the main Go file, we can then call this method. Here after this if check, to make sure that we have a valid node, there we can call user node display, like this. Well, and with that added, if we execute this, we have to assign a node title, like learn Go, and then I'm not getting asked to provide some content value. Instead, it immediately continues and then finishes. And we're getting this strange behavior because of the scanln function here. Actually, all these scan functions are basically meant to be used for single word input. So previously in the course, when we just entered a single number or something like that, we had no problem with them. But here, where we expect longer text, we can't really use scan. Instead, to get the user input, we'll have to go for a more complex solution.